The Hawk That Dare Not Hunt by Day by Scott Odell, Chapter 40. We were in London when the word came. We sailed for Antwerp that day, and I went at once to see Sarah Williams, taking Ed Grote and Juan de Palos along. It was midday, and she was sitting with her friends around a pot of stew in the cold loft near the waterfront. "He's here," Sarah Williams said. "He came last week, without so much as shoes or a cloak." "Why?" I asked. "To see Poyntz?" "Poyntz has Tyndale's papers." "No, Poyntz took them to the adventurer's warehouse." "Do you suppose that Phillips will try to get the papers? There must be a bundle." "He might. It could be the reason he's here." It was raining hard, and the rain was coming down through the cracks in the roof. Where the water dripped the heaviest, they had placed pots and pans. Now and then, someone would get up and toss the water through the window. "We should go to the other world," Juan de Palos said. "There it rains, but the sun shines, and there is fruit to eat of all kinds and many fishes to catch." "We have things to do first," Ed Grote said. Juan de Palos was persistent. He must have learned this persistence from Columbus. "Mistress Sarah can be the turner of the sand and keep us informed of the time." "Where shall we look for Phillips?" Ed Grote said. "He could be on your ship," Sarah Williams said. "We have 2 men posted," I answered. "That will serve to keep him away." "Then he could be at the warehouse," Sarah Williams said. "That's where Tyndale's papers are now. Don't forget that he has friends among the adventurers." I looked at Ed Grote, and he nodded. We left the garret, tumbling down the stairs, but in our hurry. The rain had ceased, and there was a shrill, cold wind blowing in from the sea. We could see the sky aglow when we were still a league away. By the time we reached the adventurer's main warehouse, it was on fire. The roof had tumbled in, and only the stone walls stood. Men had buckets in their hands, but they also had given up and were standing idly around. Nothing but ashes remained within the stone walls. We met Phillips by chance on our way back to the ship. It was at an inn we frequented when in the city, noted for its seafood and its absence of fustilugs. There was a huge fire burning, and he was standing in front of it. He was blue with cold and a mere shadow of the gallant man I had remembered from London. Juan de Palos was the first to speak. "We have a score to settle, I think," he said. "Do you wish that we settled it here or outside, where you can hear nothing except for the cold wind blowing?" "It is all settled," Phillips said. "Some of it, but not all," I said. "I do not like the wind very much," Juan said. "Do you like the wind, Señor Tomás?" "No," I answered. "Less even than what we see now in front of us." Phillips stood leaning against the fireplace, steam coming from his ragged clothes, even what remained of his shoes. "He is unarmed," Ed Grote said. "If he had a 6-foot double blade, it would do him no good," said Juan. "I will slit his throat quietly and push him into the fire." "That should warm him," Ed Grote said. Under his doublet, he had a club that would fell an ox. Lacking a club, he could attend to the matter with one blow of his fist. We had followed Phillips a long way for a long time, heard many rumors of him, made many threats against his life, and here he was at last, standing on the hearth of an inn where death was a common thing. Within the length of an arm, the reach of a blade. We talked, yet none of us moved. Juan de Palos looked Phillips slowly up and down. He took his Toledo blade from its leather shield. Then he glanced at me for a sign. I gave him none. In place of Phillips standing there at the hearth, I saw William Tyndale tied to a brushwood fire. I saw his eyes looking out at the clear running river and the marketplace and the crowd with its bounteous baskets and the benches filled with the dignitaries in their medals and colored ribbons. I saw him glancing calmly at the sky, at the river, and at all of us. "What became of your friend Belsie?" I asked Phillips. dead of the plague," was the chattering answer. "Why did you burn the warehouse?" I asked. "To put an end to all of William Tyndale's heretical scribbles." Phillips' hands were blue with cold. Steam came still from his tattered clothes. I wore a warm cloak, and he wore none. But I was not enough of a Christian to give him mine. If Tyndale were here now, well, not here in my thoughts, but here alive, he would have given Phillips his cloak, if he had one to give. Of this I was certain. The words William Tyndale wrote and gave his life for, "You cannot burn," I said. "Your fires lighted the sky, but nothing else." Juan de Palos rubbed the Toledo blade against the top of his leather boot, turned the blade over, and rubbed the other side. He was still looking at me, waiting for the sign. In the pocket of my cloak were a few small coins. I walked over to Phillips and put them in his palm, which was more like a claw than a human hand. I did not look at Ed Grote nor at Juan de Palos. I left Phillips there at the hearth with his rags and his lice and soulless boots and went out to the street. Juan de Palos and Ed Grote silently followed me. We bent our heads against the storm. The street was deserted, and the houses were dark, except for one where a celebration was taking place. There were lanterns in its windows and in the garden. They cast a glow upon our path. Nothing was said, but the three of us stopped as if by consent. I could see the faces of Ed Grote and Juan de Palos in the shadowed light. They still were filled with puzzlement at me, at what I had done, and at what I had failed to do. Juan de Palos took out his knife out of its sheath and rubbed it on his sleeve. "It's not too late, señor," he said. "I think William Tyndale would think so," I answered. "I think he would have chosen this way." Ed Grote said, "It is possible." We started off again. At the end of the street, through the bare branches of the tree, I could see the beckoning light of our ship. End of chapter 40 and end of the book.